Mike's up? Yep. Okay, we are. Okay, I call the meeting to order. Takes so long. A roll call. Okay.
Harry Tenenbaum,
Here.
Bill Infante,
Here.
Katie Schwer,
Here.
Jennifer Riffle, Autumn Schindler, Ryan Slack,
Here.
Jackie Whitsitt.
Here. 5 out of 7. Katie, would you like to read the all
Yes.
inclusive?
Yes. Basalt is an inclusive, sustainable mountain community that boasts both historic charm and progressive vision. It is an engaging place to live, work, and play while offering an abundance of creative, professional, educational, and recreational outlets.
Thank you so much. Okay, on our consent agenda, we have the minutes from June 25th. And there was a requested correction to the minutes, which has been accepted, right?
Or do we have to accept it through a motion?
Okay, so is there a motion to, that's the only thing on the consent agenda, a motion to approve the consent?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Great. The next item is call to the public for comments from the public for issues that are not on our agenda, up to 3 minutes. We would love to have you come up if you have something for items not on the agenda. Anybody? Okay. Let's see. Mayor and council reports and comments. Does anyone have anything you'd like to share?
I have a compliment to give.
I would love that.
I would love to give kudos to the planning staff who is so involved with the farmers market. It is a bustling and thriving part of Basalt, and it's amazing to see the number of vendors and community members who live here, and then also all of those that it attracts. So it's such a great benefit to this town, and want to recognize everyone who's involved in putting it together.
For years and years. Right, Susan?
We got more team members now and a new market manager.
Anybody else? Okay, we just want to thank Grassroots for being here and for televising and recording our meetings. If you missed the meeting, you can go to www.grassrootstv.org and watch it at your leisure. Our videographer is Natalie Ray. Take a bow, Natalie. Okay. The mayor's coffee is tomorrow at Cece's, is 8 a.m. Everyone is always invited to come chat or have comments. Let's see, and then we've got a lot of events this summer, as always. The summer concert series is happening. On Friday is the street dance at Willett's on Market Street, and I think that's going to be really fun. I've seen photos. I missed it in the past, but it's this Friday. Normally they're on Wednesday. Also, Shakespeare in the Park is this weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, at 7 p.m. on the library park. Basically, it was supposed to be down in the, but there's too much water down there. The details are on the chamber website. And lastly, Basalsa 2019 is happening July 20th from 5 to 9, and that's right here at Lions Park. And we haven't done that for a few years, right? Right. It was a huge success in the past, and I can't wait. There's something to go to every day, right? All right. Manager's report. Ryan,
No report this week, Mayor.
thank you so much.
My mind is too filled with the other 3 agenda items.
You've got plenty to do tonight, anyway. Okay. Let's see. Public hearing and second reading of, okay, let's see. Do I need to have Susan read this?
Yes.
Into the record?
Yes.
We have a change in the actual title, so we're going to have Susan read it into the record.
Okay. Ordinance number 13, series of 2019, an ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Basalt, Colorado, approving an amendment to the lease agreement with the Roaring Fork Conservancy and consent to assignment with Alpine Bank.
Okay. Ryan?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep, that's right. So as Susan said, this is a second reading. Pat, I did invite him to come. I think it was on there for 6:20, so he could walk in the door quickly, but it also looks like we have a representative from the bank. I assume that's why you're here. So in case there's any questions of the bank. Essentially, what the Roaring Fork Conservancy is asking to do is amend their lease and also authorize the signing of the landlord's consent to assignment. Essentially, the amendment to the lease allows for an assignment to the bank and allows the town also the right to cure and take possession of the building should Roaring Fork Conservancy default on their loan. So it's actually putting the town in a better spot, a more favorable spot. But recall that the loan amount for the building was rather small. It's in the $300,000 range. And so the impetus behind this entire thing was that it was going to be personally backed by the president, and they would get a more favorable interest rate if we went through this arrangement. And so that's why we're here tonight. And then the consent basically allows for the bank to assume the tenant's rights under the lease. And right now, the lease does not contemplate any assignment, so it's basically cleaning that piece up as well. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Okay. This is public hearing, so the public hearing is open for anybody who wants to make comments regarding this. And Ryan has one more thing. I'm going to close the public hearing, seeing no hands go up. Yes, Ryan?
Councilwoman Schwer at the last meeting had asked for me to go and clarify as it related to the loan that the Roaring Fork Conservancy would be securing as to whether it would be sort of a term loan or a balloon, if we'd have to go renegotiate it every 5 years. And I did verify with the bank that it would be, a single rate for throughout the term of the loan. So
Is that a 20-year loan?
20-year loan is my understanding, yeah.
Thanks.
Yep.
Okay, so the public hearing is closed. Council, comments, motions?
Mayor, I
Yes.
move that the town council adopt ordinance number 13, series of 29, on second reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great. And speaking of the Roaring Fork Conservancy, the River Rendezvous is Wednesday at Dallenbaugh's place,
Field.
whatever that's called. So that was one thing I forgot to mention. Okay, next is public hearing, second reading on ordinance 10 of 2019, Aspen Ski Company application for the purpose of considering an application submitted by the Aspen Skiing Company on behalf of the property owner Willits Town Center LLC for amendments to the Willits Town Center PUD to permit the Aspen Skiing Company Willits Workforce Housing Project on Block 9 of the Willits Town Center PUD, Basalt, Colorado. And is there a staff person? Oh, sorry, James. Done, congratulations. Thanks for coming, Pat.
We do have the applicants here with us this evening. We've got Philip Jeffries and David Corbin representing the skiing company. This is a continued public hearing and second reading on the ordinance regarding the Aspen Skiing Company's application for PUD amendments to the Willits Town Center PUD to construct a residential building on Block 9 of Willits Town Center. Process-wise, this is the fourth meeting on the project before the Town Council. After the P&Z made a recommendation and reviewed the project, and they recommended approval, the P&Z has reiterated their recommendation in a letter that they provided that's at your table. At the last meeting, the applicant presented revisions to the development application, which included a revised mix of the units. As presented at the last meeting, the project is now a combination of 1, 2, 3, and 4 bedroom units, with the 6 bedroom units removed from the proposal. As was also discussed at the last meeting, the applicants have maintained the potential for the corners of the first floor of the building to be commercial and office in the future. They've also maintained the 8 deed-restricted affordable housing units that were on the first floor that have a priority for occupancy for daycare professionals in Mid-Valley. As was also noted at the last meeting, the applicants added the 12 off-street parking spaces in a tandem configuration in the parking lot. So that is part of the proposal. The council at the last meeting also considered public comment and provided deliberation on the application, and the council voted to approve the ordinance on first reading and directed staff and the applicants to consider an annual fee for the use of the Pioneer Street parking that was less than the $22,000 that was in the P&Z's recommendation. As a result, the applicants have proposed to provide a fee of $20,000 per year to the town for use of the parking, and have proposed for that to be used towards parking management by the town. The applicants have also proposed a system for reporting so that they could get together with staff on an annual basis and discuss how the parking management is going and how the funds are to be used. So that has been included in the ordinance. Basically, the changes to the ordinance since first reading is that staff added the $20,000 per year fee for the on-street parking. We added a clarification that that could be used towards car share program once it gets going. And otherwise, the ordinance is essentially the same as was approved on first reading. Staff believes that it will be appropriate to have some additional discussions on parking management in the near future, and staff can set those up on the council's agenda. We thought those should be separate from the actual development application before you. So this evening, staff recommends taking some applicant comments. We believe that they have brief comments prepared, and then taking public comments, as it is a public hearing once again. And then providing council discussion. If council is comfortable with the conditions, you could approve the ordinance. Let me set up your.
Sure. So,
Welcome.
thanks for having us. Good evening. Before I make a few brief comments.
Would you mind just stating your names just for
Philip
the...
Jeffries,
Thank
the
you.
Aspen Skiing Company. I wanted to acknowledge staff's hard work on this project, especially James, who's been our point person on this project. He's been actually super responsive and very professional throughout. I also wanted to thank you all for your service and your thoughtful comments over the past few meetings. I think our collaboration with the town on this project is going to yield a project that will benefit both our company and the community. Out of respect for your time, I'm going to keep this very short. On the screen is my only slide, and it covers the only 3 topics that came out of our meeting together. While I covered these in our letter, in the packet that I included in your packet, I want to make sure we're all on the same page regarding the key takeaways. On climate, we are committed to protecting our winters. Our goal is to power Block 9 with renewable energy. By electrifying the building, the first and most critical step, we can combine clean grid power with on-site PV generation to achieve net zero. Regarding the parking fee, from the outside of this project, we've heard loud and clear from the public and from businesses that parking management is the #1 concern. As part of our commitment to making sure Willett stays vibrant and works as designed, we're prepared to make a $20,000 a year contribution to parking management. While we support car share and have committed to car share vehicles as part of this application, we feel that the $20,000 should first and foremost be invested in Willett's parking management and enforcement, since it is the clear community priority. And finally, regarding the desire to make this project bigger, unfortunately, it's the PUD's limit on residential floor area that is preventing this project from becoming much bigger. Yes, it is possible to make this project a little bigger, but as we put in our letter, the incremental cost of doing so is actually quite staggering. So over the last 6 months, I think we've stretched and bent and twisted to make this project fill as many community needs as possible. We've made room for childcare, an elevator, composting, car share, a new bike share station, and even bus passes for all residents. It hasn't been easy, but I look forward to getting this project built. Thank you for all your support throughout this.
Thank you, Philip. Anything else?
Just one final comment. David Corbin on behalf of Aspen Skiing Company. Philip's summation, I think, is quite accurate. We'd simply point out we have no proposed revisions or alterations to the resolution as drawn and would accept it as written. Thank you.
Thank you. If that's all your comments, this is also a public hearing, so we'll open the public hearing at 6:15. Is there anyone in the public that would like to make comments regarding the application?
Hi, Carol Hawk from Basalt, live in Willits. So here we are, and we're moving forward, and I understand that there's going to be a lease with Ski Co. in the town for these parking spaces. I just ask that you look at that lease, not make it like a 20 or 50-year term, but maybe make it a little more flexible. So perhaps in 3 to 5 years, if you needed those spaces back, you could get them back. Also, just I did a little research, and Storage Mart charges $110 a month for uncovered parking. And Ski Co. at the $20,000 a year is about $48 a month. So it's less than half of the free market. So just to keep that in mind. Let's see. And then additionally, I believe Jen had brought up a change in property taxes. What the property tax would be if it had been commercial residential, if there's any impact on property taxes now that it's an affordable housing project. And I never heard the answer to that. So if you could provide that tonight, that'd be great.
Okay, thanks, Carol. Do we have that information for later in the meeting?
James, did you bring any of that with you, or?
Don't, but I can.
Okay, you don't need to say now, but it would be nice in the course of the meeting if we could respond to that, since it was brought up at the last meeting. Other comments? It is the mayor of Willits himself, right here in front of
Scott
us.
Picard. I don't know when saying no became fashionable. I'm kind of a yes guy, especially here. I think we forget after 6 years of growth, I think we've forgotten, some of us, what it was like in 2013. We said yes to moving the hotel, so it had more visibility on the street. We thought that that would be good for the community. So a lot of us voted yes. I did. I think the chief thought it might be a good idea to give up some parking to make site plans safer for the crosswalks. I said yes. I guess thought that was a good idea. Could have said no, could have said, we need more parking. We gave up parking for small green belt, so it seems safer for the kids to cross the street. We wanted a water fountain. I think they asked the town. We said yes, seems like a good idea. Why not? The kids should have a place to play. We wanted to put in a veranda for music. Yes. So when, I said this before, if not who,
You can't remember.
I don't even remember, if not who, why not, why not yes, Jackie? I mean, this is all about growth. And when did we say they shouldn't be here? They should build it somewhere else, as if they is, I don't even understand why we would say that. Why should they go somewhere else? Why aren't they entitled to be here just like us? And this is what the whole live-work dynamic includes. I'm sure that Lipkin Warner envisioned this entire community to be a live-work community, not for me or for you, excluding them. I think it was supposed to be inclusive. So to say they should go somewhere else, they should do this or they should do that, to me seems, I guess, unfair and maybe, maybe deeper than unfair. Why do we label them they should go somewhere else? They should build it over there. When Willits was really conceived as a live-work. So the last thing I wanted to share with you, when we were building Sure Thing Burger in 2013, tough times, risky times for a business owner. Man walked by my shop while we were under construction. His name was Skip. He said, "You looking for a cook?" And he was about 70 years old, so I giggled. I said, "Are you looking for work?" And he said, "No, but I know a guy that would be perfect for you." I didn't know Skip, and Skip didn't know me, but that was a comment he made. And that's when I met my first grill cook. His name was Raphael. Raphael lived in the neighborhood, which was a good thing. He could walk to work, didn't have any conversation about living or a house. He lived in apartments by Crown Mountain Park.
Scott, 3 minutes.
Thank you. He lived in workforce housing provided by Aspen Ski Co. I hired him. I've had 9 employees living at workforce housing. I didn't even know there was a name, workforce housing. I just thought they were the apartments. Found out that Melody's the manager. We've become friendly. Gotten to know these guys in the last few months. Still a yes from me. I hope I can hear a yes from the rest of you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Other comments? Okay, we'll close the public hearing at 6:25. Go to council for comments, motions, etc. Anybody? Yes.
So I want to commend and share my gratitude for coming back with my negotiation of the $20,000 a year for management for parking. Thank you for meeting us there.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer.
Wow, I got 30 seconds. Okay. Well then, I guess I'm just gonna cut to the chase. I was not under the impression at the last meeting with my comment about the permeability of the commercial spaces. It wasn't clear in the packet, and it was only about a half hour before council had the meeting that we received an email that stated that the 2 office spaces, the commercial spaces, would not be utilized as commercial space immediately. And that, reading the recital now, that it is a consideration in the future if Ski Co finds a appropriate use or partnership. And what was really important, and one of my reasons of voting yes, and what it really comes down to is,
I'm sorry.
that's okay. It's the permeability, a reason for community to come into the Aspen Skiing Company building. And it's paramount, because that's part of co-housing, co-living, looking at the future, that seeing how the evolution of zoning, et cetera, is progressing, is downsizing so that there is more public space for people to share. It's more sharing of space. And by not having a town, a basalt use besides the child workforce housing, especially the childcare, it still is this separation of public versus workforce. And I would like to propose and see that one of the 2 commercial spaces be utilized as commercial space sooner than later. And I recognize that that would possibly change the language of the ordinance, and I want to move this along as well. But some ideas include a yoga studio, something that your staff can utilize, something that our public can utilize as well. And I thank you for continuing to meet our community and what its needs are, and as well integrate and have that porousness.
Thanks, Jim. Anybody else? No? Okay, well, I have my same concerns that I've had in the past. I think the parking is still potentially going to be an issue for the neighborhood and the downtown merchants and business people. I have never understood why everyone else in Willits could do underground parking, but SKICO can't do it. I also have to just say again that I believe that there should be commercial on the first floor. I have heard people from the Willits Center express concern about the fact that when you only have commercial on one side of the street, it takes away the commercial there-ness of it. And we have an example on this street where we have commercial on one side of the street, and we get to that block where there is no commercial, there's a church, and it kind of falls off into a hole, and it's always been very, very difficult for people to achieve success there. And I think that's a pretty known requirement for a commercial center. And as far as the leasing of the spaces, I would like to know, what is the term of that lease?
Well, we've got it in there as a renewable lease or easement.
Every year?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good enough. I think that does address the concerns that I do share with the member of the public that commented regarding that. I think we're making some big assumptions about that the parking will just be okay. And I guess we'll wait and see how that works. So that's all I have. Are there any other comments or a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that the town council adopt ordinance number 10, series of 2019 on second reading. I'm not gonna add what Jen asked for. I like it the way it is. I think we'll see how it works out in the future. So for me personally, I feel that you guys came a long way to the $20,000 parking, that I'm not gonna add anything else to it at this time, so.
Thank you, Gary.
I second Gary's motion.
Got it. We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Nay?
Nay.
Nay. Okey dokey. Did you vote, Nan?
I did. I murmured an I.
I murmured.
As a,
Okay.
that
Congratulations on
Thank you
this
very
deal. I
much.
wish you the very best of luck, and I'm sure that there will be a lot of vitality that comes along with this.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Take care.
And here's to us continuing the parking for all future Willits.
We should we should give direction to staff to bring that back, as James asked, at a future meeting when you feel it warranted to discuss Willits parking arrangement.
Oh, got it. Yes, okay.
Separate agenda item.
Yeah.
Okay, 6C, a resolution of the Town of Basalt amending Resolution Number 23 of 2017 regarding performance standards and requirements that the Arts Campus at Willits, Takah, must satisfy in order to obtain additional funding from the Town of Basalt. Ryan and Jeff.
Yeah, so I'll kick it off, and we have Jody Edwards and Ryan Honey joining us this evening, representing Takah. Basically, a few months back, Takah had reached out to us, and they are showing an interest in constructing a permanent building. As you all know, the temporary, which they had open for, was it a year and a half? 20 months, yep. Closed, I believe it was the end of April, and so they are moving forward with a plan to construct their permanent building called the Contemporary. So they're asking the town to modify the terms of the 2017 resolution that provided milestones to get access to the Rita Arts money. And now that they have momentum as a Mid-Valley Performing Arts Center, they would like to use this opportunity to create that permanent venue. They think they, want to stay with that momentum. They have a good staff right now, and I think if they can break ground and get that building going, they'll maintain that over time. They have scaled back the building and are going with a phased approach with the building. They'll use a combination of the RETA money financing through Alpine Bank, as well as donations to build the building. And then there is also, through our development agreement with Mariner, monies that were associated with that spot that were contemplated for building a public park. And that money is still available to the town. The town staff is in the process of getting bids for what it would cost to construct that park, and Mariner will cut us a check for that. And the idea would be to use part or all of that money for the public side park improvements that would be associated with TACA. The construction, basically the nuts and bolts of it for the accountability side is that we would create a construction account with Alpine Bank. Both the town and Alpine Bank would need to both review and approve any withdrawals from the account. And essentially the money that they're asking for, which is $942,000, was the balance in the RETA as of December 31, 2018. So more money is being generated this year. I believe it was approximately $63,000. But in our discussions with them, there's also an endowment that's contemplated in the resolution. And so that money generating, now forward would essentially be set aside for that endowment for future maintenance and such on the building. So we did use the same form of the resolution that we had back in 2017, but replaced basically paragraphs 1 and 2 on there to tailor it to this latest request. So with that, Jeff, is there anything you wanted to add? I missed?
I'll just clarify a couple of points. The request from TACA was in terms of when that money would be made available to TACA would be only upon TACA demonstrating that they have all the other money available and that the gap remaining in their construction budget is the RETA amount. And only at that time would it be moved from the town into an Alpine account. And again, for draws on that money, it would be require bank approval and town approval. One other point is that money would only be, I believe, restricted for use for hard construction costs, not like planning, architectural costs, and things like that. And the third thing was that the TACA wanted to, at the same time, have that money to be available to be drawn prior to them drawing on their loan amount to avoid incurring additional interest expenses as the project moved forward. So those are just a few clarifications, and got Ryan and Jody here to address council as well.
Did you want to say anything up front before we go to council discussion and questions?
I'll just note a couple things. First of all, thanks for the time. On behalf of the board and the staff, thank you. I noted in the letter, we detailed our request to you all, and just want to share a couple highlights from that as well. As many of you know, at the Temporary, we programmed over 250 events. Over 25,000 individuals came to our events. We partnered with 38 nonprofits and had hundreds of educational workshops. Important to note that over the course of our 20-month run, our programming generated, based on NEA data, $750,000 in spillover spending at nearby businesses. That's outside of what was spent at our venue. In addition to that expected income, we know that definitively $250,000 were raised by our partner nonprofits over the course of our run to support their missions at fundraisers and events at the Temporary. So it's time for us to build our permanent home so we can get back to programming, so Basalt can get back to enjoying the benefits of having arts integrated in the community. We stand ready to make that a reality shortly, and we hope you'll support us in doing that.
Thanks, Brian. Jody, did you have anything?
I have one clarification on something I noticed today when I was rereading this, and it relates to exactly what Jeff was just talking about. This is on page 3 of the resolution, paragraph 2A1E.
2A1. Turn in your hymnals, too.
Do what? Jeff was just talking about the fact that we're not going to see this money until such time as we have gotten the loan from Alpine Bank and raised sufficient money in donations. What I want you to understand, though, is some of our donations are commitments over time. So some people will say, I'll give you $100,000, but it's going to be $25,000 per year for 4 years. So we've there's a time element to some of that money, and some of it we won't actually, we have these, it would only be in the context of a written commitment and an agreement with the donor in that case. But some of that money may not actually be cash on hand. It may be a commitment that next year they're going to pay another $25,000 or whatever it is. But that is included within that total amount of money. And I just wanted to clarify that. So when we get around to looking at this paragraph E at some day in the future, everybody understands it doesn't necessarily mean we've got $100 in the bank. It could be $75 in the bank and $25 that's coming in next month when the calendar changes over.
So Jody, are these commitments generally binding?
They
Yes.
are binding, yes.
Okay.
To go on our,
It's a contract.
it's a
All
contract.
right, well, thank you.
Yeah, I just want to be upfront that some of these are contracts where somebody says, I hereby commit, blah, 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 blah.
Got it. Anything else from you guys?
I think we're
Okay,
good.
yeah,
To
Jeff.
follow up on Jody's comment, if perhaps to make that more clear in the resolution, if council wanted to, there could be an amendment in that paragraph so that it would read, instead of available for use for construction, available or secured for use for construction. So
That's fine with us.
Okay, so whenever we have a motion, we should have as amended. Okay. Okay. Council, any comments, questions, motions?
I have a question.
Yes.
I actually have a few questions. I really appreciate that you included financial information, but what to me is really missing for me to fully understand your financial position moving forward, especially when I see a net loss of $16,000, is your balance sheet. I would like to request that for me, I can't really make a decision because I don't understand your financial position until I see your balance sheet and fully understand how much cash you have in the bank. And I know that one of the requirements that we talked about was outlining your pledges. And again, I don't want to know who they are. I feel like that's confidential information
Sure.
for you to have. But to just have an understanding, because I know your letter referenced $1 million.
Sure.
But of $5 million, you're looking to the town for $1 million, you have $1 million. That's a really big loan and a lot of risk for the bank, for you, and the town. So if you could provide that additional information.
Sure,
that
yeah,
could add some potential comfort.
Sure, and I think we've included that in the packet I sent you all today. It's in there with our financials, so I'll make sure you get it. I can send
Okay.
it
I
right now,
didn't
the
see
balance
it.
sheet, so.
Or I didn't receive it in time, if you
Right.
did provide it.
Yeah. And just on that risk note, would like to add that both the board and the bank have articulated a maximum level of risk that we're comfortable with, that we wouldn't move forward with anything beyond that. I shared with Gary a document that detailed what would happen if we didn't perform any better than we did at the temporary, and we would still be able to carry that debt service. So there's a level of risk that the board and the bank have deemed acceptable, and we wouldn't move past that.
Okay. Well, we can just kind of have more detail on the financial and what you're describing is your risk tolerance and the bank's risk tolerance, because ultimately we're in this deal with you. So understanding that better. I appreciate that only hard costs would be funded, because I think that's really been clear in the RETA that we don't fund any form of soft costs. So I appreciate that will be in the resolution. I have a concern about being first in. Asking for us for $942,000 before the bank is on the hook and you're really on the hook. So I'd like to have a conversation about when does the town insert this funding, and is it, and I understand the interest cost, I completely understand that, and your rationale for wanting the bank, or for Basalt to ease that burden up front. But I would like to talk about how that's actually a risk for the town, and I'd like to share that risk and potentially have some type of, if the bank is funding $100,000, we fund $100,000, and doing something in concert instead of the town basically funding the first $1 million of the project.
In the long term, that just ends up costing it costs more to build the building, so I would have to disagree with the logic on that. It seems like this money was set aside for that purpose. We should use it for that and reduce the overall interest carry that we have to have.
Well, I completely understand that, but again, we're sharing risk together, and I think that if you want a partnership, then we should be funding in concert with the bank. So,
And maybe
that's where I
Christie
stand.
can weigh in on that. If you, I don't know if you've even reviewed this.
I've reviewed it to some level, but I think that it would just be good to look at the financial information. I think that would be fine, and I don't have any comment on the other question on the bank and doing that 50-50. I understand both sides of the coin. It is a risk issue, and it also is a funding issue in finishing, because there's a risk in not finishing the building if you have to wait for funding, and then it does, create problems with, for example, when you're looking at contractors and having to delve into contracts without getting the appropriate funding ahead of time. So it complicates it a lot, but I see both sides.
I would only suggest that, at this point, asking for a balance sheet, I don't see that you have very many assets and you probably have few liabilities. So more materials, the P&L that you did provide, where you generated 151% of the budget that you had estimated you would generate. So with $93,000 in income last year, it looks to me that you would be able to service your bank obligation, which, if I'm not mistaken, is going to outnumber ours, or basically in a ratio or proportion, be in a ratio of approximately 3-to-1 as it currently stands. So I think in that sense, we are sharing a reasonable amount of risk that is consistent with the importance that we ascribe to supporting the arts. And I guess my only suggestion would be that we not only liberate the RITA, which is for the very specific purpose of supporting TACAW, that we also consider making other funds available that are being repaid to the town from the Willets underpass, from which we have already received the first down payment of funds from the tree farm project. So we do have additional money that could be made available should the town so choose and move in that direction. But I think this is a critically important project. You guys have demonstrated the incredible value and worth of the arts to our town, and music and culture and drama to Willets. So it's time to put our money where our mouth is.
Again, reiterating the importance of a balance sheet. At this point in time, you're servicing no debt service, and there's still a $16,000 loss, so I need to see the balance sheet.
I don't think the balance sheet would
I think it
much.
matters.
I didn't say it didn't matter. I don't think
Just
it's tell you
ask
much.
for the floor. Okay. Anybody on this side that I have had my back to have a question? Yeah.
What I would like to see for the next reading, the language that,
Second reading?
oh,
There is no.
Resolution. This is a resolution.
this is a resolution.
Right. Only one.
I'd,
We can continue on.
yeah, okay, so in that case, I need to see the language before I approve as generally mentioned. So I am going to, when we get to the time, suggest for a continuation. And within that continuation, what I would like to see as well is, similarly with Katie, a language regarding the monetary amount and/or percentage of pledges. It needs to get to X amount in order to access the RITA. This goes back to the 2017 resolution that 4 of us at this table spent a lot of time, 5 of us actually, Auden was here at that time too, he's not here tonight. We spent so much time on coming up with that original resolution with the love and the support of how to make this happen and how to ensure the success and minimize the risk to our citizens. And that is something that I need to respect, the work that we've done in the past. I'm not okay with just scratching parts 1 and 2 from 2017. So continuing that forward, I'd like to hear the 3 items that Jeff mentioned, as well as I'd like to see from the construction account that no RETA funds may be utilized for payments to consulting completed by a TACA board member or organization related or employed by a TACA board member. And that includes or excludes engineers, design, architecture. So again, that brings it to the hard cost, but it's also something that the town of Basalt, with tax funds and a RETA, that we must uphold, is that it does not benefit anyone because that's a direct conflict of interest. So I don't need any comment back and forth. So for the next reading or iteration of the resolution, I'd like to see that. And as well, I fully 100% support all of Katie's requests as well of a balance sheet. And as well, a list of the current amount of pledges that you do have to date and how that will look moving forward, because as Jody mentioned, that some of the pledges are, and please clarify, it's X amount over X amount of time, not $1 million as a lump sum, because that is something that is concerning of that it needs to be built within a certain amount of time, and then as well there needs to be, in order to access the endowment, the ability for TACA to continue the upkeep and maintenance of the organization so that we can all thrive and really show our support and enjoy the fantastic benefits.
So is staff clear on what is being requested? I understand Katie's balance sheet. The no payments to board members, I would have thought that was covered with the no soft costs.
It's not written explicitly in the ordinance. And it's not written in the ordinance as is either about the items that Jeff mentioned.
Okay. Yeah, Jeff.
What is in the ordinance is that the funding wouldn't be made available until they demonstrate that gap is there. What I'm hearing with the requested changes are, one, from TACA to add that language I mentioned before about secured pledges. 2, to clarify more clearly that the money not be used for soft cost, or and to spell that out in a bit more detail. And then Jen's comment, if council agrees, about that it wouldn't go towards any TACA board member
Conflict of interest.
Anything that might be.
We do have a conflict of interest policy that.
And then there was, I think, I haven't heard any other comments or direction on Katie's suggestion on when the funding would be available related to on an equal basis with the bank, or if it would be, right now, it could be tapped into prior to the loan with the bank.
Is that a question for Katie?
Yeah, I guess it's a
My
question
suggestion.
question for council. We've heard Katie's comments, so I just want to make sure that we have some consensus from council before on all of those things.
Yeah, Bill.
Isn't that implicit, or isn't it explicit in Article 2A1E? It says you don't get the money until you either have cash, binding commitments, or a loan.
Katie's suggestion was that the money not be drawn prior, that now the money could be drawn upon before the construction loan amount could be drawn upon. And Katie's suggestion was that those amounts could be drawn upon on an equal basis, if I understood you right?
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
I understand the distinction, but I think one is a predicate for the other, but I'll defer to you.
Jody, feel free to jump in, but my understanding of the comment is, again, that the loan would be secured. We wouldn't make the money available to TACA and place it in the construction account until the loan has been secured. But then when it comes time to actually draw on the money that's sitting there, rather than kind of starting at the top and drawing from the town's money, there'd have to be a draw on an equal basis from the RETA, the Arts RETA, and from the construction loan account.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I understand that.
I understand the notion, but I don't necessarily agree with the logic. I don't know why we would compel TACA to bear additional interest expense and origination costs when a loan commitment is a commitment as binding as any contribution that you might have, and it makes much more sense to use cheap money first and use much more expensive money that is associated with fees and interest expense later. You may have more contributions as a for instance that would defer the need for a bank loan, so you may not ultimately end up drawing it. You could also structure the bank loan in a way that you wouldn't incur any interest expense. You draw what you need, and you simply pay on what you've drawn down. So, I mean, that's also a possibility.
That's fully the intent.
Okay, yeah, Jody.
One other thing that I think is being missed here is one of the things that Alpine Bank is going to require of us is a performance bond. So the completion of the project is guaranteed through that performance bond. So I don't know if that helps alleviate your concern that somehow we're going to draw all the money and we're going to have a half-done building out there. That's just not the case. There's going to be an insurance policy, a performance bond in place that guarantees the completion of this project. Otherwise, Alpine Bank isn't going to give us, they're not going to take on $2.5 million worth of risk for a $4.9 million project. So that's one element. With regard, my understanding, and maybe the language, maybe it's not 100% clear, but my understanding was this was money to be used solely for hard costs, bricks and mortar. And that's certainly what we discussed with staff. And if we need to add one or two words, I mean, it does say funds will be used for construction costs. Mm-hmm. Construction costs, not design costs, not engineers, not landscape architects, but actual bricks and mortar. If you want to add one or two words, I don't think you have to delay approval to add one or two words right now. Let's see. And as far as an endowment, the existing remaining portion of the resolution, which is not being changed, paragraphs 3, 4, and whatever, there are several more, talks about the access to that money in the future. And so what's actually happening here is we're not taking any of the, or not even asking for any of the 2019 money or any of the 2020 money that comes into RETA, and it's been coming in the last 5 years at the rate of about $135,000 a year. So let's say $250 every 2 years. And the resolution has a provision in paragraph 3 or 4 that talks about 2 years after we get our CO, which is going to be at the end of 2020, then we can begin talking to you about getting into the money for the endowment. So by that point in time, we're talking about this fund having been rebuilt up to another $500,000 before we start looking at drawing on the endowment. And that part of the resolution stays in effect, correct?
Right.
Yes.
If I may, there was just a minor clarification based on obsolete language to that paragraph, but that's the concept.
Okay, let me find, get questions or concerns from Gary and Ryan, yeah.
I share some of the concerns that Katie has. I like the amendments, the first two amendments that you talked about, the changing of E and maybe hardening the piece of the construction just to make sure it's for construction. For me personally, we went through this for a really long time in the first iteration. After that, I feel comfortable moving forward with this, and also, I don't want them pulling on that loan unless they have to. So I don't want to see the kind of sliding piece where we have to put in the same amount as the thing. The reality for us is you did answer my question about a performance bond on the thing, because that was my biggest concern, was if the loan should require them to finish this project. I know in the end, we all could be in trouble if they just fail to do this. We're looking at a bigger issue altogether, but I feel I'm willing to move forward with the first two amendments and, you know, really truly kind of work through this and see, you know, this Rita was really created to do this. You know, I think there's a lot of people sitting behind you, and there's a lot of community members that are really pushing to make this happen, and I'd like to see it sooner than later, because Taka, originally the temporary, was pretty much, it was very successful and it was doing what it is. I have same concerns as you do about the future and endowments, and not necessarily endowments, but how are they gonna make it in the future? I think, I wish Ryan sent it to everybody, because he sent me his best case, worst case, but it would be great if other people could get that. And it kind of shows me that you have thought about it, and you have really kind of a worst case scenario and a best case scenario, and in both cases, they're going to meet the needs of this building in the future. So I'm willing to risk this RETA fund a little bit and see if we can make this happen, because right now, they showed that they did it on the temporary. We talked through this a ton, getting to this point, so I'm feeling comfortable. You have a lot more community members behind you now to do this. I like the fact that you phased it and you shrunk the building, and I really don't know in the future if you'll ever do phase 2, because phase 1 might be successful and it might just work. So, but overall, I'm gonna support it with the 2 amendments at the beginning.
Brian?
I agree with what Gary said.
Okay.
I'm good.
That's all you need to say when that's all you
Listen,
need
I
to
don't-
say.
yeah, I don't have much to
Okay,
say.
well, at this point, I think everyone's expressed some thoughts, and I would ask for a motion.
What do you think, Jackie? We haven't heard from you.
I am okay with it. I believe we did all blood, sweat, and tears on this deal, and having had, I mean, I guess I trust our staff to a huge level, and I believe that they would have pointed out things that we should be looking out for. That's what they are getting paid to do. So I'm fine. I'm going to support it.
Mayor, I move the town council. Sorry, if I may, before you make the motion, just to clarify what I heard the consensus on, 2 possible amendments to be, you want to include in the motion. One was to add to a new paragraph, 1E, to add the phrase, I'm going to tweak what I said before, but available or contractually secured for use for construction of the Arts Center. And then in paragraph 1F1, it would be revised to say use of the funds in the construction account is restricted to hard construction costs instead of the word construction. I think those were the 2 primary changes that I.
Okay. Was there any other
It also
amendment?
shows
that
it
could
in
be-
the next paragraph too.
Reasonable hard. Right.
So you want to add hard there.
Hard to that paragraph too as well.
Okay. Did we have a motion?
No.
Okay.
Ryan started.
Okay.
I started.
Oh, okay.
Can I,
Jen has some-
I have more comment.
Yeah.
Okay. That Gary, myself, Katie, and Ryan all stated that the RETA needed to be accessed, not from the get-go. Correct? I heard you state, Gary, that you wanted to.
I don't think so.
It's the other way.
Okay, it was the
Other
other
way
way around,
around, 'cause I
that they
don't
could
want
access
them.
it first.
Yes, because I personally don't want to take on extra funding, because every time you touch that loan, you're gonna have interest costs, so no.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that.
And we must approve as the town.
And is anyone else on board with including a binding to the town's conflict of interest? That,
Don't we have
I think that's
rules
in
governing
there.
that already?
Bill, where is it?
I think that's in there when Jeff just addressed the fact that it has to be used for hard construction costs. So none of the soft costs that you alluded to for engineering, design, and that sort of
Okay.
thing would be eligible for reimbursement. So I think that addresses that. And then I think Brian had started to chime up and indicate that they have their own.
We do have an internal conflict of interest policy that board members are required to sign every year. And certainly, the language in this is intended for us to work and collaborate with staff to ensure that we're being transparent and using it for bricks and mortar. So I can assure you that will be the case, and obviously we'll do our reporting with the town on a monthly basis to make sure that those draws do not in any way conflict with our conflict of interest policy or best practices.
Jen, did you have, let's just see if Jen's finished and see if Bill had additional comments.
My comment, I would like to postpone this just for 2 weeks to get the language back and for us to all be on the same board to.
I think we've got a motion pending here, but go ahead, Bill.
I will second Ryan's motion.
Okay, let him say it.
Mayor, I move the town council adopt resolution number 20, series of 2019 as amended.
Second.
Okay, further discussion.
I'm just going to be honest that I'm going to vote no simply because I just want that information. And if we continue it for 2 weeks and I have that information, potentially could be a unanimous vote. But right now, I really feel that I want to have that additional financial information because I feel like that's my job here right now.
Okay.
And I'm on board with Katie, and the same that if you share financial information with one town councilor, it needs to be shared with all. And therefore, I'm not comfortable voting on it as is.
Okay, and maybe that can be after the fact as well. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No.
No.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for coming in. Okay, so, Tabor issues discussion. Ryan, Christie, whomever would like to talk.
I think I'll kick it off, and just to let you all know, we do have Bill Ray on the telephone, so he'll sit in on the conversation. We Also have Dee Weiser at the ready, as well as Bruce Kimmel at the ready, should there be a technical question that we might want to go a little deeper with their expertise on. So to start off, I thought I'd just do a quick recap of the Tabor issue and our efforts as staff and council to be transparent and accountable during the process. From the get-go, we've gathered the most accurate information possible in order to find solutions to a very difficult problem for the town. Staff has communicated with the council each step of the way to ensure that they had the most up-to-date information as well. And so I thought I'd just go through a quick timeline of where we've been, and I'll make it quick, knowing that time is of the essence. But so basically back in December, we discovered this issue as staff while we were preparing last year's budget, or this year's budget. And staff pretty quickly brought it to the attention to council in an executive session. And during that time, council instructed the staff to go get more information so that we can understand it and just make sure that our initial thoughts on it were correct. And so staff did that. We consulted with a number of subject matter experts throughout the process and have attempted to provide council with the most relevant information regarding Tabor violations. So some of those folks include the Department of Local Affairs, a state agency, Colorado Municipal League. We actually made phone calls and were able to have discussions with the ex-counsel for CML, who actually wrote the Tabor book. We have Dee Weiser on our team, who's widely considered one of the state's foremost Tabor experts. Renee Gustine, who was a former finance director for the town, also tapped into other finance folks throughout the valley and in other parts of the state, just to try to pick their brain about it. And then, of course, we have new auditors, McMahon and Associates, and we were able to chat with them about the situation. And then at the get-go, Clifton Larson Allen, which was another CPA firm, and all of those folks were in agreement that we have an issue and have violated Tabor. So Bill Ray, who's also on the phone, has helped us along the way with our public relations and just how to roll out information to the public, which has been very helpful for staff. After that initial discovery, council informed staff that they wanted us to go public with it. And so in January, we held our first public meeting to inform the community on what we found. We followed up with that in February with another public meeting. There was obviously a lot of questions coming out of that, and so gave the public some answers that we knew at the time. And then in March, we made a decision to get some community feedback after they'd had a chance to digest it a little bit, to get a pulse of the community and kind of where they were on the issue and what they felt about some possible solutions. And then in April, we followed up with another meeting in front of council to discuss the results of that survey. And in May, we, with the help of the Finance Advisory Board, put out a budget education piece, basically something that would clarify what is a pretty complicated municipal budget, distill that down into sort of simpler terms that are more easily identified by somebody that's not mired in budget speak all the time. And basically that brings us to June and July. We did have Bill Ray back to discuss a calendar, next steps, things that we might need to consider as far as timing for questions on a ballot and those types of things. And we had a public council discussion at our last meeting. Following that, we felt as staff that there were some lingering legal questions that we wanted to get answered, and so We had an executive session last Tuesday, and council was able to seek legal advice on sort of charting a path forward, and that brings us to tonight. So we continue with a very transparent approach, sort of the sausage making of resolution for this in the public, as it should be. And basically staff tonight is asking for council direction on a path forward. And we would like that in the form of a motion, directing staff on next steps. And part of that is timing. So we are coming up against basically having 3 more meetings until we would have to adopt a resolution and certify a question to the ballot. That would likely happen at our last meeting in August, but there's some preparation, obviously, in advance of that. And so really the direction we're looking for is on 2 different issues. The first is about the mill levy rate and what to do with that. So we see that there's 3 options. One would be to seek voter approval to set a new rate. We could ratchet down to the lowest rate from 2010, which is 2.56 mils. And we could do nothing and set the mill rate as we have. The second issue we would like direction on is a question about what we do with the excess revenue. And there's essentially 3 options under that as well. We could keep the money and opt to do nothing. We could seek voter approval to retain the money. And lastly, we could refund the money. Under that refund scenario, we went into great detail at the last meeting about that, but there were basically 3 scenarios there. One was a multi-year property tax credit. The second was perhaps the sale of town assets, use of fund balance, and then the last would be to issue refund checks using certificates of participation. So I think it's important that staff provide our recommendation and our strategy for charting a path forward and getting some resolution to this. And basically what that is to seek voter approval in November to set a mill levy rate as it is today. I believe that's 5.957. Isn't that right, Christy?
5.952.
592, thank you. And to provide a refund to the current property owners using certificates of participation. We feel that using the certificates of participation has benefits that outweigh the other options, such as a lower interest rate. It doesn't have the same effect on our fund balance as some of the other short-term debt options might. And it would also allow us to keep our service level high, assuming that we are able to pass the mill levy in November. So with that, that's basically where we are. I think that staff on your behalf has done a lot of work and a lot of thinking about this, and I think that this strategy, we're willing to put ourselves out on a limb a little bit with that, but we think that it's the best path forward and probably the one that can lead to resolving this issue.
So I think I'm ready to make some kind of a decision. I feel like staff has gone way out there with experts and talking to every attorney and policy expert and our own staff, community survey. I feel like they have gotten us every bit of information that they could probably get us, and I'm sure all of us have probably gotten some little research done on the side on our own. I know I have. I believe that it would be the prudent thing to do to follow staff's recommendation. I feel like that is the way to go. As some people have said, that really isn't our money anyway. It belongs to the citizens, and I would love to see us refund it. I think that staff's suggestion as to how it should be refunded is spot on. I think they've checked every possible scenario of how we could do it. And I also believe that if we do that, that we are going a long way in rebuilding the trust that we may have lost over the last several years. And we all know what we're talking about with that. It's really easy to create a situation that causes more division. I think this is an opportunity for us to create a situation that brings us together and engenders trust in the elected officials in this town and the staff of this town. So I am ready to have a motion on the table tonight on this deal to refund the overcharge and to go to the ballot in November to ask for a mill rate to be set. So I would just like to hear where everybody else is. If you have additional information you need from Ryan, I'd say, let's see if he's got it right now tonight. And if you have an opinion, I would like to hear that, if you're ready. Katie.
Okay, you're looking at me. I
You
guess
have a
I'll
face.
talk.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with Jackie's comments. I think last time I kind of outlined where I stood and why, because what I'm seeking is the least expensive solution to this problem. I want to provide security to our citizens and to our staff who work so incredibly hard and have done an amazing job uncovering this and then creating solutions for us. I want to provide a continued level of service that we as citizens have all enjoyed over many decades. And I feel like the best way to do that is to secure the mill levy through a vote in November at 5.952.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
It could be 7, so I bet he's
5.957.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, he's right, because I got the 2.562 in my
Okay.
head back.
Okay,
Sorry.
we're gonna go with 7.
I realized it when I did that.
And being that we've looked at this in so many different ways for 6-7 months now, and like I mentioned, our staff has done such an amazing job of researching this. We have counsel with an S that has advised us prudently, and consultants that have done the survey to indicate the direction that our citizens seem to want us to go. So I support a mill levy rate vote in November, a refund that is funded through COPs.
Thanks, Katie. Anybody else ready? Jen?
I as well have not wavered from where I've started at, and that is to seek voter approval for the mill levy rate. I am receptive to the 1994, when it was last approved, which was 6.151. There was a great turnout for that. It was very popular then. I'm not stuck to that, but I just want to put it out there that our voters did approve that. So we do not need to necessarily have what it is for this year. Looking at the excess revenue, I'm on board as well with the voluntary refund via COPs and the option of the property tax credit. That seems like, oh wait, no, it's issue checks.
Issue checks.
Yeah, by issuing checks to those who own property currently. My reasoning for this is that I think it's ludicrous and crazy to do nothing and keep the money. It is a known fact through practice that we have a very litigious citizenship. And I don't want to risk that. Looking at the future, and when I came into office, there were COPs that were and are outstanding that previous councils have approved. I am not concerned with the future viability of the town's financial ability to pay the COPs back. And for my future counselors who will sit in these seats, I hope that they trust and respect all of the homework and efforts that this administration has done and not see it as a burden. This is part of The beauty of 2016 to 2020 is getting Basalt out of yesterday so that we can be here today and be ready for tomorrow.
Thanks, Jen. Anybody? Anybody?
I have a couple
Ryan?
questions on the COP real quick. Can we pay it back early?
So we actually thought that question might come up tonight, so we did ask Bruce Kimmel, and I'll take a quick stab at it, and Christy can maybe help me out.
And was the
Paying
question
the COPs back early.
early? Yes. Okay. Yeah.
So basically, it was years 1 through 6.
Years 5 through after years 5 through 7.
After
then
years 5 through 7. Okay, you
there's-
do it. 'Cause
Okay. That's fine. After years 5 through 7, there's a possibility of being able to repay those early without any sort of an interest rate increase in the actual percentage that people will pay. But if you go much earlier than that, then you probably have to pay more interest. There'll be more interest costs. So you can do it, but there's a cost to it.
Is there any way too to take the funds that we're receiving for the underpass from East Lane and make a smaller COP? So we're taking less.
You could, yeah.
Because that's unrestricted funds, correct?
It's our opinion, Christy and I did some research about it. Our feeling right now is that is unrestricted, and that could be used as part of the equation. You know, I think I would suggest that you all have a little more conversation around that. I don't think it's a bad idea at all. Yeah, it could possibly, lower that cost, the annual cost we'd be paying back. But on the other hand, too, as it relates to our fund balance, it's always nice to have that be adequately robust and in accord with our policy. But also, are there other projects out there? If in fact, let's say we forward a question to the voters and they say, we won't pass a mill levy, do we have, maintenance that we would need to do with it to figure that out? So, I would hope that wouldn't be the eventuality, but, it is a bit of a cushion. So, but staff would be happy to bring that back. The only other thing I would ask that I don't know the answer to is if you reduce COPs to a certain level, does the interest rate, is there a magic number that the interest rate would start to go up if it's too little an amount?
That would be a Bruce Kimmel question because he's really real profound in the market. But I could tell you with the true interest cost, which should include all the fees, as the total value of the issuance goes down, then there's fewer, bonds or whatever you would call those COPs to spread the costs over. Mm-hmm. So then that cost would increase as
the effective rate. Okay.
Right, the effective rate, correct. So if you wanted to get Bruce on the line, we could.
Do you want us to get Bruce on the line? We could get.
No, it's fine. No.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
You ready, Gary?
At the last meeting, I was trying to figure out to go for potentially 2 questions because, the reality of this, it's going to hurt the town's financial position no matter what. And so, I definitely agree with that we need to go to the voters and set the mill levy rate. Legally, it was great to talk to Dan Weiser and really understand the legality of it all. So I'm pretty clear that I'm definitely, I want to set the rate. I like the rate that we're at today. It seems like it's a fair rate. Going back to the 94 rate, it was a different town at the time. So I'm pretty happy with the rate we're at today. And, I think the voters can I talked to a lot of voters in a demographic that didn't answer that survey. And, the reality is a lot of people who would realize what that funding went to, realizes that the town didn't just give it to, just give it to somebody. It didn't come to my pocket or anybody else's pocket. It went to childcare. It went to WeCycle. It went to, our affordable housing. It went to a lot of things that we couldn't do without that mill levy rate going where it was. And so I worry that, by doing a COP and refunding, that we are going to significantly impact what we can do. But I do respect the work that the staff has done. I respect the work that Bill has done with the community. And, I think I can be, and the reality is trying to do both questions is a huge political lift for the community. It's a huge political lift to get both of them passed. I think, going the route of a refund and then setting the mill levy rate says, made a mistake, here's the money back. We're not going to hurt the town tremendously, but we need the mill levy set at a certain level so we can provide the services. So I think I think I'm there, and I think it's the most prudent thing to do, and it'll get, some of the people that really responded to the survey who really were like, give us the refund, you made a mistake, we're giving you the refund. So that's where I'm at. One question.
Thanks, Gary. Well, one thing that I was reminded of too in chatting with Ryan is that when Dee Weiser was here too, and supposedly the legal expert on Tabor, and he had said to our faces, if I had to put my malpractice insurance on it, I'd give the money back. So I think we're leaning the right way. Go ahead.
And I got a very different reading from Dee. But given my several moments, I am fully on board with the consensus, which is we must seek voter approval for the mill levy. This was the advice of our lawyers. This has been the consistent advice of staff, and that I think is absolutely firm. Based upon what Dee said, I thought he said I would stake my practice on the viability and the standing of your case if you secure voter approval to retain the money and not refund it. He said you would have a very good case. It would be a defensible case. And I pressed him on this because my original understanding was that no matter what we did, we were going to open ourselves to risk and liability. And Dee very firmly said, no, that is not the case. And so, based upon the advice of the preeminent Colorado lawyer on Tabor, I am very much inclined to seek voter approval, which is consistent with our outreach to the public for their consensus and referendum on positions of importance. And if the voters would like to have the refund, then that is what we must honor. But if they vote because the funds were not spent frivolously, they were spent, as Gary said, on childcare, on public goods, on things that benefited the community, and if they agree that they were spent for the interest and benefit of the community, then we will significantly reduce the liability to the town and significantly reduce the burden on our cash flow for a significant number of years. If, however, they do decide that they would like to see the refund, then certainly based upon what we've heard from Dee and everyone else and Bruce, the COP seems the way to go, and debating how we structure the COP seems like something for other experts to deal with, like Bruce and Christie and others. But I do not see that having two questions threatens one or the other. I don't think that a shrewd wordsmith like Bill Ray couldn't come up with language that would couch this and frame it in a way that presented these fairly and appropriately, and in a manner that can secure approval for both.
Well, the one thing that didn't get said this evening is that the experts and our staff and most of us on council unanimously agreed that we violated the law of the Constitution. And for me, there's such a thing as right and wrong here too, and not necessarily what you can get done on a ballot question, but what's just plain old the right thing to do. So I guess at this point, I would ask if there is will to make a motion to ask staff to pursue moving forward with language and whatever work needs to be done for
the mill rate question in November, and also the refund with COPs.
Madam Mayor, if I may, so to be clear, yeah, the staff is seeking a motion to direct council to prepare a resolution with ballot language to approve a mill levy. And then that would be on the rate question. On the revenue issue, if, based on what I've heard on the consensus of council, it would be a motion to direct staff to prepare and bring back to council an ordinance to issue a refund and to fund that through the issuance of certificates of participation. Again, and so just to clarify, these things are coming back to council for final action. This is not final action.
Motion to
tonight.
direct
Correct.
staff.
Yes.
Right. So can we do that in one motion?
I think, yeah, I think
Can we
you can.
just say a so moved?
I think you can.
Okay,
So
and Pam can
moved.
catch up later.
Is there a second? Further discussion?
I'm sorry, who made the motion? It was
Jen, and I seconded.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I simply have a question on how to vote, frankly, because I agree unambiguously that we need to move forward with the mill levy referendum. I think that seeking voter approval is not unreasonable. So do I split my yay and nay?
Your vote is nay.
Or-
Yeah.
Well, they'll come back to council for separate action items now. So this is just direction.
Okay.
So there'll be
So
another
I would
opportunity
be
to
in the
provide
nay
input.
category then.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Thank you for all the hard work, everyone. And just so the public knows out there that, as I think we've been making pretty clear, we haven't been taking a lot of public comment because we've been working through this. But once there's resolutions out here, and there will be public comment taken for sure on this. So, okay, what we have left is review and approval of donation policy on town parks property. Susan.
Okay, so creating a donation policy for trees and for benches and for public art was included as part of the post-work program that the council reviewed back, I think it was November and then again in January. And then consistent with the direction and the ordinance that the town So this is the theme music for our, our donation policy, but, you know, kind of consistent with the direction that you included in the ordinance and as part of the discussion is that Post is to develop an outline and a framework before doing a deep dive into the subject. So that's what we're bringing to you today. So we're not bringing you an exhaustive set of recommendations. We're looking for you to give Post feedback. So
That's
what
good,
we-
because we're already exhausted.
So, hey,
7:30.
James, somehow
I
we,
know, this is hard work.
So basically, we have 4 different categories that we had. Somehow the slide up there is cut off. That's okay if they don't read it, because they can read it in their packet. So if you can see, there's 4 different colors here.
You got it.
So there's 4 different ways that you can make donations. The first one is the green column, where you can make a donation to a tree and a beautification fund. So you're not making a donation to a particular tree, you're making a donation to a fund. Post would make recommendations on the fund. You'd have a wall of donors at Town Hall. And then the pink is benches. And on terms of benches, we would have acceptable benches and locations in parks where those benches would be accepted, and you could have a plaque on the back of the bench. We showed some examples of benches that we currently have, for example, in Old Pond Park and in the Basalt River Park. We would then also keep, the planning department would kind of maintain the acceptable benches, and obviously the gist of this is to have something that's easily maintained and fits within the theme of that park. The blue is the public art. That's probably the most complicated part of the policy. And I think that as just general background, how we develop this policy is staff took a stab at developing the policy after looking at what a number of local governments did. Watkins and I also participated in a webinar that gave advice about how to deal with public art. So what we had kind of recommended was let's not take donations of public art, but if the council feels that we should take donations of public art, then here's the policy. And then we took that to first Basalt Public Arts Commission. They looked at it June 10th, and they basically supported staff's recommendation, but they said, hey, as a couple caveats with that. One, we're doing this park master plan, this arts master plan, and so once we do this arts master plan, we'd be willing to visit it. They also put out an idea of they would like to work with someone on commissioning a piece of art, so that if you were going to make a donation, you'd work directly with BPAC. So the following Wednesday, which was June 12th, we took this to post, and we also took public comment at that meeting. And where post ended up was really we should make an opportunity for all three venues for the public art. And so that's what's being recommended is post recommendation. So one was to make a donation to the public art program. So that's one option, and you would get on a wall of donors. Two, you could commission a piece of work and work directly with BPAC. And then three, you could have a sculpture or artwork. And then we kind of tried to set some parameters on that. And obviously, these probably deserve a lot more discussion. So here we're just kind of get a framework. So initially, we were trying to set locations where you would accept that art. We were suggesting Midland Park, where the bridge, the Spring Creek Bridge, which is also known as the Bridge to Nowhere, where you take the corner, and also kind of the edge of the Sea Garden and going into Ponderosa Park over there by the roundabout. And under the recommendation that kind of Post worked through, Post didn't want to weigh in themselves on a particular piece of art. They wanted to kind of set the parameters for the art and let BPAC kind of weigh in on that. There was some other kind of pieces to this that are listed under here, and most of them are really geared to making sure that the town is indemnified if anybody is hurt on the piece of art, or the fact that the donor is paying for the installation of the art, and having the donor actually sign paperwork that has to deal with the bill of sale and rules of how the donation would work. So those are the three opportunities. So Post, again, they didn't go into a deep dive. They talked about the number of art pieces you'd accept per year and thought like once you gave general direction, they would reweigh on that. And then the last one is the yellow, which you would make a donation to a future memorial garden or wall. So basically that was Post's recommendation. So what I think we were envisioning, I know that Lynn is here and I thought she was, yes, sorry, you're behind the podium.
So is Peggy.
And Peggy. I think Lynn would like to speak tonight, but we were looking for general direction from the council so that we could work out the details.
Okay. So Lynn wants to speak?
Lynn does, and so does Peggy.
Okay.
So when I went to the Post meeting on the 12th, I left ecstatic. I thought you guys had really done a fabulous job of widening what could happen with donated art in town, where it didn't just all go to a giving garden. You have a lot of different options. I had some questions, and I'll just throw these out and they can be answered later. It seemed to me that the placements that were designated for the art were only 3. Over by Old Pond, Ponderosa, and I can't remember the other one, but
Midland Park.
Midland Park. But we have the space over by the South Side sign now, where people who have children at school want a big glittery longhorn, which would be so cool on some town property behind that South Side sign. Also, the sign that is being designed by the sign company, a sign committee for the east end of Two Rivers Road is designed with a pedestal for a beautiful piece of sculpture. So I don't know whether you can widen or leave it open about where other places in town where public art can be placed. And then it says, post would propose parameters, guidelines for the public art with the specified parks. I don't quite understand that. Is that the placement of the art or the type of art? Because that seems to be a conflict with BPAC. I mean, I think BPAC ought to have the jurisdiction over the art, and post ought to have jurisdiction over where it's placed. Now, maybe that's splitting hairs, but it sounds like they're sort of, well, I don't know what you would call it, maybe treading on each other's territory. I mean, we have BPAC, Public Arts Commission, to decide about public art, and we have Post to decide about our beautiful gardens, which are absolutely spectacular this summer. Oh my gosh. So, and one other thing, about if the town must move a donated piece of art, it says they will try to find the donor. However, you will be in constant contact with the donor because they're going to be giving you money every year, I gather, for maintenance. And so I don't think try is a good word. I think they must make every good effort to contact the donor. And if the town does not want the piece of sculpture anymore, then I think the person who donated it ought to be asked if they want it back. In other words, I can imagine if somehow this fabulous sculpture that Mr. and Mrs. Bear want to donate it, if it had to be moved or wanted to be moved, that maybe their grandchildren would like to have it back. So it's just a thought. And as far as the June 12th meeting, it started out really interesting with expanding, and at the end of it, Carol Hawk said, you know, it sounds like we're sort of getting back to the beginning where all we had was a giving garden, and with all the what ifs and, oh no, you can't do that, and you can't do this, and what if this, and what if that. And not once did I hear how much public art adds to the visual ambiance, economic bottom line, joy and beauty of a municipality. And I'm going to send this little thing around, if you would include it in everyone's somewhere, because it's a link to how art contributes more than $760 billion to the U.S. economy every year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lynn.
Hey, it's your turn, I think.
Lynn, would you like to give that to Pam? And she can make sure council gets that.
I would be happy.
Thanks, Ryan.
My.
Yes, ma'am. Hi, how are you?
Thank you for having me here. First, I want to say, just this summer walking all around town with my dog and friends, and the gardens are amazing, the signs are amazing, the sculptures that are out there. I just think Basalt looks amazing, and I think that that's credit to all of you.
Thank you, staff.
No, really, it does. It looks amazing. So my in-laws would like to donate a statue costing somewhere around $100,000. They've commissioned a guy, but they have not actually started yet because we're waiting for approval. And it is a life-size fly fisherman sculpture that the artist Howard Neville has created before. He did one in Fraser, Colorado, and he's done some other big pieces, which he doesn't actually have a website, but he has a Facebook page. And I did print off a couple that I would like to hand to you guys this evening to see. His artwork is amazing. And I just think that it would be a gift to the town that would be beautiful in a town that is the meeting point of two beautiful fly fishing rivers. And that's what we're famous for, or one of the things we're famous for, I guess. So I guess I just need to know, the other thing that it would be fully paid for, installation, all of that would be covered. There is also a fund if there needs to be repair work done on it. There's already a fund of like $6,000 that's held at Timberline Bank. So I guess I just need, and as a bronze age, it patinas and it gets even more beautiful. So the maintenance on it, I don't think would be a lot. The only thing the artist did tell me is that in another piece, he did a fly fishing rod, and the rod had been broken off a couple times and it was replaced. And that, of course, could be done with that fund. So I guess I just need to know what the next step would be to hopefully get some approval and to have this moving forward.
We're actually working on just the policy side of this tonight. We appreciate you coming in to tell us that, but we won't be making any decisions like that here at this level. Definitely, we're going to look at the policy.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, yes, Gary.
I appreciate staff and Post and BPAC working on all of this stuff. And, you know, the reality for me is looking at Post, who determines, you know, really works with the community, works with staff to determine, you know, kind of master plans for our parks and where art would fit into those parks, I think is somewhere, you know, that Post would say the location, but it would have to be, I don't like just picking places now. I would write to have Post really work on figuring out what the best locations are, you know, because we're working on a big plan for this park over here. We're working on a plan for Albany Park. You know, they can include art in those locations, but once those locations are chosen, I totally believe that it's up to BPAC to really try to figure out what the art is. I do like donations of art, but it has to be part of the art master plan that's being created. And I think, you know, I always really love that citizens like Peggy and others want to donate stuff, but I think it has to be in a planned way. And so I like the direction that this is going, because benches are the same thing. They should be determined locations, and then donations can happen, so the town doesn't have to spend the money to put those. But I don't like, you know, in my other job, we get inundated with requests to put benches on every single place on the Rio Grande, but we're creating master plans to show where benches would be acceptable, and then they can be donated, and amenities can be donated, and, you know, interpretive plans have been donated. And so that's a better way of doing it than, you know, kind of just leaving it open. So I like the direction this is going. So for me, for the art piece, I would like, you know, us to really work on a plan for our parks and find locations that work. BPAC can be part of that discussion, but also once those locations are chosen, I do believe that, you know, if we're going to allow art there, that BPAC, you know, really be the one who works to it. This is why we have citizen committees, to work through all these issues, but I want it to be in a planned way, because this could get out of control really quickly. And I don't want to be back here shutting the door on everything because we didn't plan it to begin with.
I agree with Gary. There needs to be a master plan versus, I mean, and I thought this is how we started, I don't know how long ago, of we don't want just hit and miss of people bringing stuff, and without us having a master plan to say, this is what we want it to look like in the end.
Isn't this what we're giving direction to, though, in this, in section C3? Post would develop parameters for public arts and town parks.
That
So,
doesn't really sound like a master plan, but.
but that's something that's on Post's plan. I think this is an awesome plan. I
So-
love it. I
so
love
that's
I
what's
love that we're increasing the arts. I can't wait to see this statue. It's going to be amazing. I love seeing the fishermen over here. I think public art is a boom for us. I think it's something that everyone wants, the art in this town. You can walk through Carbondale, you can see many of the sculptures that they have placed around town. They have them moving. I think if we could do something of the same I think you could open us up to amazing opportunities for BPAC to do commissions, and there's so many different options. So I love that this kind of gives a vague plan, but it gives us a plan to keep moving and start giving some people some direction. And I think we should expand the locations of where we can put ARC, not just limit it to 3 parks.
I think if there's a master plan, though, that will delineate all that.
Because that's what Carbondale did. They designated locations for their revolving public art. It's all about designating it so people know where they can donate it. And that's where I think we should move forward to, and I think you are.
Anybody else?
That direction.
Bill?
Yeah. I'm just not sure what the recommendation of staff was and what BPAC agreed to with regard to the arts. With regard to benches and trees, I defer to experts. No strong feeling or opinion. It makes sense to govern these in a manner that protects resources and still provides the assets. But in terms of arts, if I understand correctly, it says staff's draft outline recommended that the town not accept public art. And I don't go along with that at all, because for a town like Basalt, which within our strategic framework has pinned our identity to art, not to accept art just doesn't seem consistent with who we are and who we want to be. And you reflect on the great works of public art over the years, the libraries, the museums, the contributions of sculpture. If we didn't permit those at any other time in the United States, I think we would be a significantly less rich country and far worse off. The notion of having a plan is of course logical. Yes, we want to have a plan, and yes, we want to have a vision of what we can do, but frankly, art is certainly about spontaneity and about innovation. If people told Christo he couldn't wrap stuff, we wouldn't have had one of the most magnificent exhibits in Central Park. I mean, bar none. So I think to prescribe very closely what we will do and where we will do it and forevermore cast this in stone would be misguided. But the notion, too, of encouraging BPAC to work with a donor to commission art, I see that we have that opportunity before us. We're designing a river park. The river park has its people who are going out and designing the grass and the sod for that piece, and then you've got the master planners who are doing their thing. We have an art base. We talked about this the other day. The identity of that parcel is going to be hinged very closely to the existence of the art base, to the existence of a maker space, and to deny the ability of BPAC to in any way not encourage as actively as we can for BPAC to work with an existing donor who wants to provide that commission, I think is just a great gift that we should take advantage of. And I know we're talking about policy, but I don't know why we're having such a difficult time saying yes to a contribution that does fit this fourth column of BPAC working with a prospective donor.
It sounds like to me that we are maybe very well going in that direction, and we're just asking them for a master plan, and maybe their master plan says this is going to be pretty open and flexible. So
okay.
I'm going to say that they got your message.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the reality is what we're looking at, what I was talking about originally was the draft right there is what I'd like to move forward with, making sure that we incorporate a plan to where we accept the art and really make sure that we have the designated locations, because I think when you're developing this park plan, you're going to come up with those locations, and you're going to work with the community, you're going to work with BPAC and Post, and I think that's included in these blues that I see. Is it not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I don't know.
Okay, you guys, hold on just a second. Okay, everybody's just talking. Do you need a motion? Because we're just
Sure.
sort of
Do
rambling
a
at this
motion.
point. Gary, do you have a motion?
well, I make a motion that we take this graph,
Draft
the
of
draft,
June 12th.
the draft of June 12th, and my motion is to direct staff to work with Post and BPAC to refine this, to come up with a donation policy that includes all of these things. And my motion also includes that, the reality for this is it needs to be, an overall plan for the town. And the plan should be part of where BPAC is going with their overall master plan and where Post is going with designing their parks and stuff. That's where this public art should fit in.
That's a huge motion.
And I like it, and I encourage us to do more public art.
Is that a second?
And I'll second it.
Did you get it, Pam?
Most of it, yes.
Okay, close enough.
What don't you like, Bill?
Okay,
Yeah,
further discussion.
Again, the only point that I would still take issue with is point number 1 under C1, which says donation is not for any specific public art piece. So if I come to you with a celebrated piece of art,
No, those
that
are options.
says,
There are options.
Yeah.
No, that's,
Yeah, can I,
You can do
can I
all of them.
clarify this? You get to pick one of the three things. They're not, you can say, I'm just gonna donate to a public art program, that's one, or I can go to BPAC and commission a piece of work, or I can come with my piece of work.
okay, if that's how it reads to you,
That's how I tried to write it that way, but.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Great, adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
thank you.
Oh, and by the way, this can be off the record, I guess.